No,
Are
we've
you
actually
feeling
really
fresh?
enjoyed being with each other. He's
that's
one of my
good.
favorite people in the world.
It's been a dream to join the MCU. The movie is called The Fantastic Four. I'll confess, I did all my stretching for...
Something strange is happening in Hollywood. Marvel Studios, the same powerhouse that used to dominate the box office without breaking a sweat, just dropped a $250 million blockbuster. And almost nobody noticed. No meme storm, no cultural moment, no sold-out theaters, just silent.
There's a lot of Marvel movies. If you're in the top 5, you're doing well.
Fantastic Four. First Steps was supposed to be Marvel's next big reset, their fresh start, the return of one of their most iconic superhero teams. Instead, what they got was a lukewarm debut, an even colder second weekend, and a fan base that seems more tired than excited. But this isn't just about one film flopping. This is about what happens when a media empire starts to lose the one thing it needs most: trust. Because in the world of billion-dollar franchises, it's not just the opening weekend that matters, it's what happens after. And Fantastic Four, First Steps didn't just stumble, it fell flat on its face. With Pedro Pascal at the center of the storm, social backlash bubbling behind the scenes, and fans questioning whether Marvel has any idea what it's doing anymore.
Whether they like it or not, they're never getting...
He won't leave me alone.
This movie might just be the canary in the coal mine, and the signs, they're impossible to ignore. Over the next few minutes, we're going to break down what really went wrong with this film. From the jaw-dropping second weekend collapse, to the mystery of the missing budget, to the rising backlash against Marvel's biggest names. Because the question isn't just, why did this movie flop? It's, is the entire Marvel formula falling apart? And if so, what comes next could be even worse. Let's start with the number no studio wants to talk about, 61%. That's how far Fantastic Four, First Steps, dropped in its second weekend. 61% fewer people came back. 61% less momentum. 61% less hope. Now, some might shrug and say, that's normal. Other Marvel films have dropped just as far. And they're right. It has happened before. But here's the difference. Those other films started strong. Fantastic Four didn't. When a movie comes out swinging, raking in $150, $200 million on opening weekend, a steep second week drop is manageable. The hype cushions the fall. But when you open soft and still fall off a cliff, that's not a decline. That's a nosedive. Opening weekend numbers for First Steps were underwhelming from the start, just over $149 million globally. Not terrible, but not the MCU standard, especially not when you're rebooting one of the most legendary superhero teams in comic book history. Then came the second weekend, and that's where the cracks turned into craters. A 61% drop meant that word of mouth wasn't spreading, audience interest wasn't growing, and whatever excitement existed before the release had already fizzled out fast. And that's the part that really matters, because second weekend numbers are more than just stats. They're a litmus test for fan trust. They tell studios whether people are talking about the movie, recommending it, coming back for a second watch, or dragging their friends to see it. When the numbers fall this hard, it means the opposite is happening. People are walking away unimpressed, or worse, completely indifferent. And Marvel, they're running out of excuses. Back when the MCU was printing money with every release, Disney could afford to shrug off a few underperformers, but those days are over. Fantastic Four, First Steps wasn't just another Phase 4 side quest. This was the reboot, the beginning of something new, a cultural reset. Instead, it turned into a red flag, and not the kind that gets fans excited. Think about it. Marvel poured more than $250 million into this movie. They assembled a stacked cast, pumped millions into marketing, and rolled out the usual flashy trailers. And yet, the audience barely showed up. The second weekend numbers don't lie. They're not just measuring interest, they're measuring momentum, and Fantastic Four had none. Even more concerning, this kind of drop doesn't happen in isolation. We've seen it creeping in over the past few years. From Eternals to Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania to the Marvels. Each new project launches with slightly less buzz, slightly less excitement, and slightly more skepticism. Fans aren't just picking and choosing anymore. They're tuning out entirely. And it's not just about superhero fatigue. It's about broken trust. Back in the early days of the MCU, fans believed every film would be worth their time. Whether it was a cosmic saga or a street-level origin story, Marvel delivered. Now, that confidence is gone. And Fantastic Four isn't just the latest example. It might be the tipping point. Because when you start soft and fall hard, studios don't just lose money. They lose leverage. They lose cultural pull. They lose the one thing even Marvel can't buy: loyalty. And here's the kicker. That 61% drop, it might just be the beginning. Let's talk about the money, or more specifically, where the hell it went. On paper, Fantastic Four, First Steps cost around $200 million to produce. Add another $100 million for global marketing, and we're looking at an estimated $300 million total investment. Factor in the box office revenue split, where theaters keep roughly half of all earnings, and Marvel needs this movie to clear $600 million just to break even. So far, it's not even close. Current projections suggest the film will struggle to hit even $550 $50 million globally, and that's if it gets lucky. That means First Steps isn't just underperforming, it's losing money. But here's the real mystery. What exactly did Marvel spend that money on? Because when fans watched the film, the reaction wasn't, wow, this looks like a $200 million blockbuster. It was, that looked okay. The visuals were fine. The effects were decent, but nothing jaw-dropping, nothing groundbreaking, nothing that screamed, this cost more than Infinity War. And that's where the questions start piling up. Some insiders have pointed out that the film may have tried to cut corners. There are rumors that VFX shots were recycled from past projects, or that fewer action-heavy scenes were filmed to keep costs down. If that's true, then why does the budget still clock in at blockbuster levels? On the flip side, if they didn't cut corners, if this really is what $200 million gets you now, then something is deeply broken behind the scenes. Because fans are noticing, and they're not being quiet about it. In an era where even mid-budget films like The Creator are delivering visually stunning worlds on a fraction of the budget, Marvel's bloated spending habits are starting to look outdated and unsustainable. The Creator, for example, was made for just $80 million and still managed to impress both critics and audiences with its scale, style, and innovation. Meanwhile, Fantastic Four, with more than 3 times the budget, looked polished but generic. And that's a problem, because if fans walk into a Marvel movie and don't feel the money on screen, if there's no awe, no excitement, no spectacle, then that price tag becomes a liability, a reminder that something doesn't add up. Even worse, the studio has gone silent. Marvel hasn't confirmed the film's final budget, which is never a good sign. When they're proud of the numbers, they brag. When they're not, they hide. And right now, all we're hearing are whispers about slashed scenes, compromised VFX, and creative teams working with limited tools under maximum pressure. So where did the money go? Did it disappear into bloated reshoots? Into extended actor contracts? Into last-minute post-production crunches to salvage a story that never fully came together? Whatever the answer is, one thing's clear. Fantastic Four: First Steps looks expensive without feeling expensive. And in a franchise built on spectacle, that's a recipe for disaster. Because when the budget doesn't show up on screen, eventually neither do the fans. Not long ago, Pedro Pascal could do no wrong. From The Mandalorian to The Last of Us, he was everywhere. The scruffy, sarcastic protector archetype fans couldn't get enough of. Every new project felt like another win for Pedro. He wasn't just cast in major roles, he was adored for them. Meme culture practically worshipped the guy. So when Marvel tapped him to play Reed Richards, a founding member of the Fantastic Four, it felt like another home run, a slam dunk. You don't just cast Pedro Pascal for visibility. You cast him because people love him. Or at least they used to, because now that love is starting to fade fast. The first warning sign wasn't even about acting, it was about presence. Fans started noticing Pascal was everywhere. A-listers are supposed to be ubiquitous, that's the job. But Pascal's constant exposure across genres and franchises started to wear thin. From sci-fi to post-apocalyptic horror to superhero films, he was in everything. And it wasn't just a few memes poking fun. It became a running joke. Social media threads labeled him the human green screen. Others joked that casting directors were using a Pedro Pascal starter pack for any major project. And then there was Liam Neeson's savage one-liner at a surprise screening. No zombies, no superheroes, and no Pedro Pascal. The audience laughed, but the message? Loud and clear. What was once endearing now felt like overexposure. And in Hollywood, that can make curiosity go away. When audiences feel like they've seen the same actor in 10 different roles in a single year, their interest doesn't build. It crashes. They stop being excited and start feeling exhausted. But that wasn't the only problem. Behind the scenes, things were getting even messier. Pascal's social activism, once quietly respected by many, started turning into a PR liability for Marvel and Disney. He's been outspoken on issues ranging from immigration to social justice, and while his intentions might be genuine, the timing couldn't have been worse. In the middle of a delicate press tour for a struggling franchise reboot, Pascal's off-screen comments weren't just making headlines, they were stealing them. And Marvel? They weren't happy about it. According to inside sources, Disney executives, including CEO Bob Iger himself, pulled Pascal from key press events. They allegedly scrapped an entire behind-the-scenes featurette focused on Reed Richards, all to minimize further backlash. And while no one on the record has confirmed this, the silence speaks volumes. Because when your lead actor becomes the story, not the film, it's a disaster, especially when that actor's popularity is already taking hits. And make no mistake, this wasn't just about that. This was about control. Studios spend hundreds of millions crafting narratives, both on-screen and off. When the public face of your film goes rogue, even with good intentions, it throws everything off balance. Pascal's supporters argue he's being punished for speaking his mind. Others say he knew the risks, and now the consequences are showing. But one thing's clear, Pedro Pascal didn't elevate this movie the way Marvel hoped. If anything, his presence may have made things worse. And that's not just a PR hiccup, that's a brand crisis. Because when your biggest stars start alienating your most loyal fans, either through overexposure, controversy, or just plain fatigue, it signals something deeper. Marvel used to turn actors into icons. Now even icons can't save a sinking ship. Now, let's talk about the elephant in the room, or as some fans are calling it, the 6 woke points. Before Fantastic Four, First Steps even hit theaters, controversy was already brewing. Leaks and early reviews hinted at what some critics called a fully woke take on Marvel's first family: diversity, representation, progressive themes. And like clockwork, the backlash came hard and fast. Now, let's be clear. Representation alone isn't the problem. In fact, it's long overdue in many areas of entertainment. But here's the twist. The backlash didn't come from just one side. It wasn't just angry internet roasts shouting into the void. Even some longtime fans, people who want Marvel to be more inclusive, started asking the same question: can a film be woke and good? And Fantastic Four didn't exactly help its own case. Instead of feeling like a bold creative vision, the film's approach came across as checklist storytelling, box-ticking representation without the emotional depth to back it up. Characters felt like tokens. Plot lines felt engineered for applause, not impact. And the result? Instead of inspiring, it felt hollow. Critics praised the film's inclusive cast and fresh take, but audiences, they weren't moved. At least, not enough to buy tickets, not enough to spread the word, and definitely not enough to build the kind of cultural momentum Marvel used to command. Because here's the real problem. When studios treat wokeness as a marketing strategy rather than as meaningful storytelling, it backfires badly. And fans have seen it happen before. Remember The Marvels? It was marketed as a feminist victory, an all-women team-up. But when the script didn't deliver the stakes, the emotion, or the character arcs, the message fell flat. Eternals did the same. Big promises, global cast, inclusive vibes, but the execution? Bland and forgettable. With Fantastic Four, Marvel promised a bold reimagining of a classic team. But instead of bold, it felt safe. Instead of new, it felt forced. And instead of empowering, it felt like a corporate checkbox. And here's where it really stings. Even people who want change, who support more diverse casts and progressive themes, are starting to roll their eyes. Because they don't want stories that preach to them. They want stories that move them, that challenge them, that make them care. Instead, Marvel keeps serving up the same formula, now with a diversity filter slapped on top. And audiences are noticing. Online debates are spiraling. Is the film too woke? Is the audience too hateful? Are the review scores fake? Is the backlash real? The noise is deafening. But underneath all of it, there's a simple truth. People didn't show up, and that's the part studios can't spin. You can argue about agendas, review bombs, or internet roasts all day. But when the seats are empty, none of that matters. The message is clear. And Marvel, they're running out of room to ignore it. Because being woke isn't the problem. Being lazy about it is. Audiences want characters with depth, not diversity quotas. They want bold storytelling, not safe PR campaigns. Fantastic Four. First steps could have been the proof that superhero movies can evolve, grow, and reflect a more modern world. Instead, it became another data point in a growing trend. When Marvel tries to make a statement, it forgets to make a story. And in the end, fans don't care what box a character ticks. They just want to feel something. Once upon a time, a Marvel movie was more than just a film. It was a cultural event. Fans lined up for midnight premieres. Social media exploded with fan theories, Easter egg breakdowns, and viral memes. Trailers were dissected frame by frame. Every release, even the smaller ones, felt like a piece of something bigger, a movement, a moment. But Fantastic Four, first steps, there was none of that. No hype, no electricity. Just a quiet, underwhelming rollout that came and went, like a whisper in the wind. And for Marvel Studios, that silence might be more dangerous than any negative review. Because in today's attention economy, silence doesn't mean people are being polite. It means they've moved on. The film had everything going for it. A classic IP with massive nostalgia, a built-in fan base, and a supposedly fresh direction. And yet it failed to generate any real buzz. Memes were scarce. Fan debates? Minimal. Even Marvel's most loyal defenders, the ones who usually flood Twitter with explanations, justifications, and hype, were unusually quiet. So what changed? It's not just superhero fatigue. It's something deeper, something cultural. Marvel used to give people a reason to care. There was always something new to uncover. Each post-credit scene hinted at something bigger. Each crossover felt like a reward. The audience trusted Marvel to deliver something that mattered. But now, the trust is gone. Too many shows, too many mid-tier movies, too many half-baked plot lines that led nowhere. And suddenly, the Marvel brand doesn't mean event anymore. It just means content. And content is everywhere. Everyone's making it. Everyone's streaming it. And unless it feels urgent, unless it feels special, people won't pay attention. Not with their wallets, not with their time, and definitely not with their enthusiasm. Fantastic Four. First steps didn't feel like an event. It felt like just another item on Marvel's bloated release schedule. And fans noticed. Even the audience review numbers tell the story. Sure, the film has over 90% approval on some platforms, but the volume of reviews is shockingly low for a Marvel movie. Only around 10,000 verified audience scores on Rotten Tomatoes in the first week. That's a fraction of what past Marvel films received. And this isn't a new trend. The Marvels, Quantumania, Eternals all saw huge drops in audience engagement. People aren't just skipping the theater. They're not even talking about the movies afterward. That's not just box office failure. That's a pulse check. And the pulse? It's fading. Marvel didn't lose its audience in one bad movie. It lost them in 1,000 small ways. By treating their fans like they'd always be there. By assuming that throwing together a few familiar faces and a CGI climax was enough. By underestimating how quickly hype turns into apathy. And now they're feeling the cost. Because the most dangerous thing a brand can face isn't hate, it's indifference. And for the first time in over a decade, that's exactly what Marvel is up against. Here's something that doesn't doesn't add up. Critics gave Fantastic Four First Steps an 86%. Audiences rated it even higher, over 90%. On paper, it looks like a win. So why did the box office completely fall apart? It's a paradox that's becoming more common in Hollywood. High review scores, low audience turnout, great ratings, but empty theaters. And nowhere is that disconnect more obvious than with Marvel right now. Let's be honest, people don't trust Rotten Tomatoes anymore, not like they used to. What was once the ultimate seal of approval, the go-to source for judging whether a movie was worth watching, is now seen by many as just another marketing tool, a place where numbers are polished, perceptions are managed, and hype is manufactured. And Fantastic Four is a perfect example of that gap between perception and reality. Because if the film is genuinely that good, why didn't anyone care? The answer might be simpler than it seems. Scores don't create excitement, moments do. In the early MCU days, movies like Iron Man, The Avengers, Guardians of the Galaxy, they didn't just get good reviews, they delivered moments. Scenes that lit up the internet, characters that became instant icons, dialogue that people quoted for months. But Fantastic Four? There were no viral clips, no breakout scenes, no cultural pull. It was a film that got the technicals right, but missed the emotional spark. And in today's content-saturated world, technically good isn't good enough. You need to be must-see. And Fantastic Four never earned that status. Even the verified audience scores tell a deeper story. Only a small number of people even bothered to leave a review. That's not just a weak number, it's a signal. The people who did see it mostly liked it, but the majority didn't show up at all. And here's the harsh truth. If a Marvel movie has good reviews and still flops, that means the brand no longer sells itself. Once upon a time, that would have been unthinkable. Marvel could slap a logo on anything, and it would make $1 billion. But those days are gone. The Rotten Tomatoes score might be fresh, but the audience energy is stale. It also doesn't help that fans have been burned in the past. Remember Eternals? It had the visuals, the cast, the Oscar-winning director, and an early wave of positive buzz. But then it landed with a dull thud. Fans started to feel like they were being misled, that critics were giving passing grades to films that didn't earn them. And when that happens too many times, people stop listening. So even when a film like Fantastic Four scores well, it's already fighting an uphill battle. The damage is done, the audience trust is gone, and numbers alone won't bring it back. Because in today's world, reviews don't decide what goes viral. Fans do. And when fans stay quiet, when they don't meme your movie, quote your characters, or recommend it to their friends, no score, no metric, no studio spin can fix that. The verdict is in. Marvel movies might still get good grades, but if no one's watching, then none of it matters. Here's a question that Marvel doesn't want to answer. How many reboots is too many? Fantastic Four First Steps was marketed as a fresh beginning, a bold new take on Marvel's first superhero family, the kind of reboot that could restore faith, reignite passion, and rebuild what Phase 4 had slowly eroded. But let's be honest, it didn't feel fresh. It felt familiar, recycled, and not in a nostalgic, fun way. In a haven't I seen this exact formula before kind of way. And that's the real danger Marvel is facing right now. Audiences aren't excited by reboots anymore because they're not really reboots. They're reruns, dressed in shinier costumes. Think about it. How many new beginnings have we seen just in the last few years? Eternals was supposed to start something new. Shang-Chi introduced a new hero with franchise potential. The Marvels tried to reframe the cosmic side of the universe. Loki, WandaVision, Secret Invasion, Echo, each one pitched as vital to the larger story, but none of it stuck. And now, Fantastic Four is being pitched as the new foundation, the new hope, the big reset. But here's the thing, you can't reboot something that never stopped running. The MCU hasn't taken a breath. It's just kept churning, project after project, character after character, all without a real sense of direction. Compare this to the early days of the MCU. Back in 2011, when Captain America, the first Avenger released, it wasn't just a good movie. It was part of a larger plan. Fans could feel the momentum building. Each movie added weight to the next. It wasn't just entertainment. It was world building. Now it feels like Marvel is throwing darts in the dark, hoping that something, anything, will land. And Fantastic Four First Steps might have been their biggest throw yet, a $250 million risk to win back old fans and pull in new ones. But when the dust settled, it turned out to be just another reboot in a sea of reboots. No emotional anchor, no long-term promise, just more of the same. And here's what makes it worse. Marvel doesn't have time for slow rebuilds anymore. Back in Phase 1, they could afford to be patient. They weren't spending $200 million per movie. They didn't have massive streaming platforms to feed. They weren't fighting for attention in a world drowning in content. Now, every misstep is expensive. Every flop is a signal. Every movie has to justify its existence. Marvel is trying to reset, but they've never stopped running long enough to actually change direction. And if Fantastic Four was their idea of starting fresh, the future's looking shaky. Because at this point, it's not just about what Marvel can do. It's about what audiences are willing to wait for. And right now, that patience is running out. So here we are, a $250 million movie, a beloved IP, a powerful cast, high critic scores, and still, Fantastic Four First Steps is one of Marvel's most embarrassing underperformers in years. This isn't just a stumble, it's a cultural shift. The kind of shift that happens when an audience, once loyal, once passionate, quietly turns the page. Marvel was never supposed to fail like this. They had everything, the characters, the momentum, the fan base, and for over a decade, they turned those ingredients into an unstoppable entertainment machine. But even machines break down. The multiverse fatigue, the hollow storytelling, the overexposed actors, the over-reliance on old formulas, the forced diversity that's more about marketing than meaning, the bloated schedules, the content overload, the broken trust, it all adds up. And now, Fantastic Four stands not as a bold new chapter, but as a warning sign. For years, Marvel could rely on name recognition alone. They could coast on goodwill. But that era is over. The audience is demanding more. They want purpose. They want emotion. They want to be surprised again. Because the real lesson here isn't just that Fantastic Four flopped, it's that good isn't good enough anymore. In a time where fans are more discerning than ever, decent doesn't sell. Audiences don't want another safe reboot. They want a reason to believe again. And if Marvel doesn't give them that, they won't just lose a weekend. They'll lose the entire foundation they spent over a decade building. But here's the thing, it's not too late. The Marvel brand still has value. The fan base, while burned out, isn't gone. The potential is still there, but they need to stop trying to recapture the past and start building a future people actually care about. That means fewer empty promises, fewer CGI distractions, and fewer woke for the sake of woke storylines that forget to tell a good story. Marvel doesn't need more reboots. They need a rethink, because the age of guaranteed billion-dollar blockbusters is over. Nostalgia alone won't cut it, and name recognition won't save you when no one's watching. Fantastic Four: First Steps was supposed to be the spark. Instead, it became the smoke signal. And the question now isn't can Marvel come back, it's will we even care if they do?